Every time there's been a communication medium invented in the past, it has been the big historical change. The printing press was the big historical change. It was bigger than any of the kings or emperors or anything that, arose out of it. And radio and television are the same, and, Morse code, God, made a difference. And the internet, obviously, social media has been catastrophic. And we are headed into the situation where technology is evolving so fast and is so powerful. If we wanted, we could probably create something ourselves which actually served our interests and not the interests of loads of perverts on private islands in the Caribbean. So this is a video about that. So this video is more detail about one of the ways I think it might work. And so, to that end, I'll start with a short video from a Native American guy called Russell Means, who was talking to Congress in 1989. I think this video is amazing. Here it is.
Hamatakwepe, miumalakota. Imaganta han wakin zitioshpai, kile hesapakin, liluakan. Mitaki ye ate tashunka witko tioshpai. Mitaki ye ina wambli zuya tioshpai. This is a traditional greeting of my people that I am bound to give, albeit it's a short version. What I said in my own language, translated into English thusly. Hello, my relatives. I am an Oglala Lakota, and I come from our very sacred holy land, the Black Hills, where Yellow Thunder Village is. My mother is from the War Eagle clan, and my father's family is from the Crazy Horse clan. This greeting is to this day the way all Indians throughout the nation still greet one another, those that still know their culture. This is the only way we present ourselves to one another that is acceptable. We tell you who we are, where we are from, who we are from, our clans, and we do this without ever saying our name. Anything less would be an insult to you and to my people.
And the reason I think that video is amazing, because here in New Zealand, the local native population, the Maori people, use almost exactly the same protocol. Like when there's formal situations where introductions are required, they do exactly the same thing, and they call it Whakapapa. It's letting people know what your context is before you start talking. So you get to talk about your ancestors and the lands that you came from and your family and so on and so on. And I think what that does is it kind of serves two purposes. It serves a purpose from the person saying it, in that they are heard and respected, and it puts them into a kind of mental state where they're more likely to be honest. If you're invoking the memories of your grandparents who have moved upstairs, or your ancestors and so on, or people that you will see again who are part of your family who are still alive, you are far less likely to lie than if you just start talking, and because of that, the people hearing it are put into this sort of mental framing of respect and listening as well. And within that, the possibility for people to change their minds becomes a lot easier. So I think those two are incredible. And New Zealand is 10,000 kilometres away from the United States, across, rolling blue ocean. And the Lakota tribe that Russell Means comes from is halfway across America again. So these two different cultures, like pre-European, that were doing exactly the same thing, I don't think they learned. I mean, I think Polynesian navigators were a lot more capable than we gave them credit for. And I think they were probably all over the South Pacific all the whole time. But I'd struggle to think that these two identical protocols of introduction were learned from each other. I think they emerged naturally, and that there is probably an adaptive advantage to, if you're living in oral tradition tribal societies, there's an adaptive advantage for the thing as a whole, for this protocol to exist. And once you sort of start tuning into it, it's everywhere. I mean, I think it's even, the Bible, such and such, son of so-and-so, such and such, and, the Vikings did it. I think probably every culture has it to some degree. And the Bible one, these long lists of genealogies, it looks to me like an oral tradition trying to make a leap into text. And text has its advantage and its disadvantages, but it's not an oral tradition. I think when you write it down, you lose something. It's like drawing a circle around it, giving it a name, and after that you can have done with it. I think it needs to be something that is spoken out loud. I think that is the spark that jumps the gap. The spoken word is the spark that jumps the gap. So there are various other places where I've seen it turn up. For example, there's this YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly, and I think that body of work is possibly one of the greatest works of art ever created. I think it is absolutely incredible. It's this American photographer who does interviews with misfits, the sorts of people who ordinarily would just get written off, street people or drug addicts and prostitutes and rapists and torturers, all the people who would ordinarily, be the least of us and persona non grata. They get to share who they are, and they always start the same way, and that is, where are you from, what was your family like, what was your childhood like, and it creates this thing where these people aren't instantly enemies. And I think one of the purposes of art is, in the very, very, very long run, art is the thing we bother to keep. It's the only thing we bother to keep. Trajan's column is a piece of art. It is worth a fuck of a lot more than all the swords and sickles and all the sort of, physical artifacts that, functional artifacts which were created. And I think the reason for that is it allows us across time to let other people know what it was like to be alive now. And I think that's what Soft White Underbelly does for these people. I think it's really cool, and I think, the guy sometimes gets shit for making a career out of other people's misery, and there may be some truth to that, but I don't think it's what's important about it. I think what's important about it are the stories that are being told. Now, Whakapapa is a Maori word, and there will be perspectives onto the meaning of that word that aren't available to people who do not speak the language. So what I'm saying is, an approximation. So forgive me, I'm old but still a child. But Whakapapa is the word I'm going to use, I think. I think it says what I hope it means. I hope it means what it says, whatever. So I think New Zealand's second most important cultural artefact, by absolutely miles, everything else below it is a rounding error, irrelevant. I think its second most important cultural artefact is the Maori language, is Te Reo, is the language of the people who were here first. There's this old German emperor, Charlemagne the Great, or the First, or whatever he was, and he said that to have two languages is to have two souls. And I think there's something to that. A language is not just a codified way of describing something. A language is a lens through which you see the world and other people and everything. So I think New Zealand's most important cultural artefact, second most important cultural artefact by miles, is the Maori language. It's a miracle. It's another soul. Another talk Russell Means did, he talks about how his people, the Lakota people, the average age of a speaker of their native language is older than their life expectancy. And he kind of paints that with other things as a type of genocide, and I think he's right. And although a language can be written down and codified and all the nuances can be captured, and theoretically it can be recreated from nothing at a later date, I think, and I think that's what he is saying as well, it needs to be part of an oral tradition. The spoken word is the spark that jumps the gap. It's not enough to have something like Latin, where a language isn't spoken for hundreds of years and it's not being passed from one living person to a next. I think it needs to be passed from one living person to a next. So the most important cultural artefact that New Zealand, or anybody for that matter, has, which is more important than the language that is used to do the speaking, it is what is being said. It is the voices of the people. And some of them are idiots. Some of them are wrong, and some of them are, the worst people in the world. Some of them are saints. And none of that matters. What matters is that they are heard. What is being said is what matters. The stories that the people are telling, and Australian movie makers, writers, and TV show producers have a special genius for this, and I think they might get it. I think it might be an Irish thing. If you, for example, there's this absolutely brilliant Australian comedy called The Castle, and it starts off, "My name's Dale Kerrigan, and this is my story." And the first 8 minutes is him doing his Whakapapa. It's him talking about his family, and that instantly puts the audience into this sort of sympathetic situation, and his character into a situation where he can be nothing else but honest. And it's beautiful. And I think what we should be doing is trying to create a way of talking to each other that incorporates that as a sort of basic starting point, rather than just going in with agendas looking for a fight. And I'm not the only person doing this. I'm just sort of talking about it. This is very, very close to what Roger Hallam, the Extinction Rebellion guy, is doing in the UK with his mini citizens' assemblies. I mean, he's got different goals, and he wants to take over local councils and so on. Whereas I just want to live and have as much fun as I can doing it. I want us to survive. He's doing something very similar, and David Snowden, who is also in the UK, is doing something fairly similar. Well, there's a big overlap with is using children as ethnographers, collecting stories basically to their own communities. So this stuff is underway, and I'm really just sort of talking about it at the moment, and I would really like to be doing stuff in real life as well. I live in Kapiti in New Zealand and Wanganui in New Zealand, both fairly sort of small towns. If anybody's interested, get in touch and let's do something. See you later.